To close out the year, I'm rewinding and bringing back the most popular and most listened to episodes of 2024. I'll be back with new episodes on Monday, January 6th. But in the meantime, here is today's Best of Rewind episode. This week's theme on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast is, are the days of ultra low interest rates gone for good? Well, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons to think that maybe we might never go back to that ultra low interest rate environment where you're getting a 3% mortgage, low rates on everything from car loans, even credit card debt was much lower than it is today. So today I want to talk about the case for higher interest rates for longer. And the primary reason for that, of course, is sticky inflation. We had COVID supply chain issues, we had government stimulus, and these things that were the big drivers for inflation have largely worked their way through the system at this point. So the expectation was that by now, the Fed would have slayed the inflation dragon by raising interest rates and doing so aggressively. And then, of course, coming into 2024, we were going to see a few rate cuts and things would get back down to that cheap and easy money. So why isn't that happening? Well, if you're thinking about it as the horse and the cart issue, the horse is inflation and the cart is interest rates. So inflation, the horse needs to slow down. Inflation needs to go back down or at least start trending much closer to the Federal Reserve's 2% target for them to start lowering interest rates. They've been emphatic about saying, 2%, 2%, 2%, that is the target. Now, it'll be interesting if they stick with that because it is a very difficult thing to achieve. But I think they realize rightly that keeping inflation quite low is the most important target. And if we have to have higher interest rates and 8% mortgages to achieve that, so be it. And if you're wondering kind of what the Fed's thought process is on this, the nice thing is when they have their meetings, they publish their meeting minutes. And so the most recent May meeting minutes from the Fed's meeting just last month showed that officials are questioning whether interest rate policy is restrictive enough. In other words, they might even be willing to raise interest rates more to bring inflation down to that 2% target. Inflation is sticking around. It hasn't really budged all that much this is just a guess because I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but they got inflation trending down pretty quickly once they were aggressively raising interest rates. But I mean, it's been almost a year, I want to say, since inflation has kind of hovered around this 3-4% target rate. And so it's sticking around. It's not really budging much. It is still too high for the Fed to start lowering interest rates. 3% inflation could easily turn into 4 or 5% inflation. And so the Fed is taking a cautious approach because if they lower interest rates, then what you will see most likely, and they know this, is that inflation is going to spike again. That is very damaging. We do not want that. They're not always that smart, in my opinion, but they're smart enough to know not to raise interest or lower interest rates. They did that back in the late 70s, early 80s, and it caused a real bad problem. So the conclusion here is that 2% inflation targets are hard to achieve in this current environment. The inflation is just too sticky and it's just a little bit too high. And there are also some other reasons why I think it's going to be hard to get back down to that 2%, elusive 2% inflation target. And I'll talk more about that tomorrow. There's some demographic issues. There's some other things going on with the world economy and the political situation that I think may get difficult for that 2% target to be reached, which means interest rates are going to stay higher for longer unless something else changes. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Ashley Michike, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips podcast.